to be self-reflective, you have to be self-aware first and foremost, right? Because you can't think about things that you're doing or that you may have done if you're not even aware of who you are and what you do and what your strengths are and what your challenges are.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Optimalist, a podcast where we've set out to explore the optimal way to educate in the age of AI. If you're new here, I'm Sara, your host through this exploration of the elements of human flourishing. This week, I bring you a long-awaited discussion with Evan Whitehead. Evan's story is one to sink into deeply if you are someone interested in alternative paths through the educational landscape. Evan is a thought leader in the field of education. He's also an author, speaker, and a mindset accountability coach. He's an advocate for the process he calls balance, boundaries, and breaks in helping manage mental health and lifestyle choices, which we'll dig into more over the course of our conversation. If you're a leader looking for an inspiring voice in another leader, one who learned to prioritize his own health and create the career and life he needed, you'll appreciate Evan's thoughtfulness and grace and determination. He's a great example of adaptability. All this and more on today's Optimalist.
I've actually come full circle in terms of my career path and my trajectory because I started working in education as a paraprofessional at a therapeutic day school, which is a private or non-public facility for that serves students whose needs can't be met in their home public school. And in terms of the least restrictive environment, it's pretty restrictive, almost the last step before students may have to attend a residential facility. So I started this in 1997. So as doing that. And now I've come full circle where I'm back into the non-public therapeutic day school setting now as an executive director of a new startup organization in school that opened back in February. And our focus is to serve, primarily students with autism, intellectual disabilities, and severe learning disabilities, which is interesting because when I started my career, in particular, the students with autism or eligible under autism were once considered what we call low incidence, disabilities, because it just wasn't that, it wasn't that common as it was, as it is now. So for me, going into special education, starting the field, my focus was working with students with emotional disabilities and what we used to call behavior disabilities. So now coming forward, like entering this space is really interesting for me because it allows me to truly, model what I want others to do in terms of lifelong learning and improving your craft. Because I didn't teach this particular student population, I was involved with them in terms of that. So by the time being in central office or district level administration, now in my current role, I'm learning myself as I'm going. So I'm learning from those that I supervise, those that lead. I'm learning from some brilliant people who have been doing this for a couple of decades, and they're teaching me things every day, and I learn something new every day. I actually had a chance to kind of put together two of my passions. One, which is education, and the second is really this space that I really came acquainted with probably in the last 4 or 5 years of being able to start something new, right? And being able to kind of, be able to mold something from the beginning in my own vision, be able to implement things that I've always wanted to do, but not necessarily had the ability or the flexibility to do so, but now being able to do that. And also it's exciting to start something new, like the energy, the excitement, the passion of growth, of being able to take some risks, right? And being able to learn like on the fly. One thing that I truly believe in currently my organization now is that where we are is a learning space. And it's a learning space for everyone. That includes students and also the adults for the staff. And part of learning, right, is that mistakes are going to be made.
Mm-hmm.
But the key component of that is that it also has to be a safe space, right? And it has to be safe physically, psychologically, and also emotionally in order to take those risks, right? So if I'm a student in a class, right, if I don't feel safe in those three areas in the classroom, I'm not going to take risks in my learning because I don't feel safe to do so, right?
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, to expect me to take risks in my learning and do things I've never done before or things that may be a little bit uncomfortable or unfamiliar to me is not going to happen. Same thing goes for adults, right? And staff. If I'm a staff member and I'm an adult in an organization, a school, a district, et cetera. And one, I don't feel physically safe, right? The odds of me focusing or on and my focus being on my teaching or instruction of students or helping students learn is probably going to be far and few between because I'm going to be more concerned about my own physical safety. Being able to do that for my staff, my students, and also, finally the families that I serve is extremely important. And I get a chance to be a lot more closer connected to the families that I serve now because of the role that I'm in and that we're a smaller startup, which is great. And also making the families finally, feeling as though they have a home and they have a home for their child. And also for them to be able to feel a level of rest as well, because for a lot of them, it's been challenging. So being in the space helps me feel good and be able to do that and give back and still maintain a lot of things that I've always wanted to do. And
It sounds really like you are truly in a place that was made for you at this point. The way, like, even when we spoke last time, everybody who's listening can just have a little bit of background of Evan and I did a meeting probably about a month ago now.
Yeah.
Where we just kind of chatted to get to know each other. We'd never spoken before. And, we wound up having a really fruitful, maybe intense conversation that I was like, wow, we should have just been recording this the whole time. But that's what happens. And so I got a lot of the backstory of Evan's story and life. And it really does fit together well with how the little bit that I know about you, I think.
Yeah, no, it does. I, like many other people, have always had have had challenges in life, right? I'm not perfect, don't claim to be, but I've had challenges, challenges from on the mental health side. I've had also, other struggles as well that have kind of framed my mindset and been able to break through those challenges and be able to go through a personal transformation of sorts has really put me in a space where I feel that if I can support others and help them to be in a healthier space and then not have to experience some of the challenges that I did, I want to be able to do that. So I do feel good about kind of how everything has culminated and come together with that because I can kind of do a lot of those things. So it was almost like, meant to be and the stars aligned and being able to do that. So I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, I love that. And I am wondering if you could give any insight into how you promote or advocate for elements of self-awareness and, developing what we were joking before as being things that might be the new sets of skills, like mid-century skills that we might need. What are those? Like, I'm not sure, we're identifying them on our end, on the Swivel and Optimalist end, as being things like radical self-reflection, which leads to that self-awareness and routinely socializing that as part of our classroom environments, and then part of our home environment, making that be almost like over time become the core of who we are, because that will elevate us to a level where we can consistently grow and evolve beyond whatever artificial technology is around us. And so, who we are really is, really depends on how we think about ourselves and what we take action on based on reflection, right? So I'm thinking about not that you're revolutionizing these things every single day. We're not expecting that kind of an answer, but just knowing what's important to you, and knowing what you value in a community, or what I think you value in a growing community, I'm wondering if there are ways that you do promote or advocate for these kinds of skills. And that
Yes.
goes along with, and because all of that ties into the move towards a more mindful way of living. And
Yeah,
so I think they all connect, but yeah,
they
just
do.
wanted to give you a chance to talk about that.
Yeah. So, with my own mental health challenges that I have, and also dealing with some of my other struggles, I had to do a lot of self-reflecting and coming to the point of understanding about myself. And it was done through a lot of therapy, a lot of treatment. And I will say that I also had some formalized training and support, when I was in a program as well to help me through that. And when I was in the program, that was the first time I learned about mindfulness. The way that it was introduced to me was really more about like almost like a sense of awareness and being able to do that. Because for me, as I was going through a lot of my healing, as I refer to, is that I realized that I lacked a lot of the ability to not only be self-aware, but also to manage a lot of my emotions as well that cause challenges for me and things of that nature. So as I began to reflect and think about that, learning about mindfulness, which at the core is nothing more than just the awareness of being aware, right? That's what it is, to be mindful. And then also being able to live in the moment and to be present, right? Because for myself, I realized that I was either always kind of thinking about things that I had done in the past that I couldn't change, right? That had already happened. It was, those are events or actions, or, whether it was trauma that had already happened in my life and I couldn't change it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But living in that space, right, is not healthy, right? And that are those type of things are at the core in terms of, one potentially being in a depressive state or potentially being diagnosed with depression. And then the other component is that, overthinking things that have not happened or what could possibly happen, right? And allowing your emotions to kind of run free and overthink, and where you're almost somewhat, creating a movie, so to speak, that has not even been released or even premiered, but yet you've already seen it, but also you begin to almost somewhat live in it. And that is really the state of, people moving towards being anxious and potentially could be maybe diagnosed with anxiety. And that's kind of where I was. Like I was always extreme. I never had like, kind of like an in between, which now that I refer to is like a middle path of understanding that, you don't have to be extreme in what you do. Your emotions don't have to be extreme. And how do we be able to get centered in doing that, right? And being able to be
I
centered
love
to
that.
do that is really where a lot of the mindfulness comes in, because it allows you to be present, right? Be in the moment, right? Don't focus on what happened in your rear view, right? And don't look so far ahead that it's out of focus, right? In the front of you. So that was kind of like a revelation for me, to understand that, wow, that's always like kind of how I've been. So being able to get to a point in which I can do that, has been extremely helpful. And that midpoint kind of comes to, what I, began to refer in terms of like being in balance, or what people may refer to as being in balance. And in order to do that, though, you really have to be able to be self-reflective. But to be self-reflective, you have to be self-aware first and foremost, right? Because you can't think about things that you're doing or that you may have done if you're not even aware of who you are and what you do and what your strengths are and what your challenges are. Once you are able to do that, that becomes your foundation and your base, right? And then everything else kind of evolves or grows from that. We talk about things. People want to have a work-life balance. They want to make sure like they're balanced in terms of their mind, body, spirit. But really, it's in life, right? You have to be able to differentiate and prioritize what you're going to do, because everything changes all the time. It's a constant movement, right? So you have to be able to know yourself and then
Mm-hmm.
understand what you're going to give and what you're not going to give in order for that balance. So that's kind of like the first component. and then how I do that and talking about and discussing that idea of balance for one, what I do for myself in order to do that. And part of that is one, being able to meditate on a regular basis, daily at minimum, ideally multiple times during the day, because depends on when I need it. So that helps to ground me and also center me as well.
That is important, right? You mentioning breaking to meditate is most beneficial to you if it can be multiple times throughout the day. And I do think that that's something that we've always tried to bring up with people and advocate for, is that
Yes.
routine of thinking like you don't have to be someone who embraces this idea that meditation always has to be this half hour of sinking into the moment, which it can be. And I guess it should be on some level at some times to really get the full benefits. But when you're someone like yourself, and I imagine it's similar to what I feel about things like my practice with yoga, and other people understand that as well. But like, you're someone like yourself and you have now learned what it does for you in certain areas, that like there becomes a craving for that, for what that gives you. And you learn
Yes.
that it elevates that self-awareness, right? Because then you wind up learning like it's not only just a mental or brain thing, like
Yes.
you learn like the changes in your body, right? Your body feels certain ways, like, and it's not necessarily being always triggered by something, but it's like, it becomes, I feel like people who really go through this, like, understand the real connection between, how mental health really is whole health, because you really get that brain body connection is felt so wholly. I could dive in.
It's
passionately
true.
dive into
right.
this topic. But at the same time, like the idea of being able to get that, to cultivate that desire to do something throughout the day, give yourself moments to recognize. It's not just making time for a break. It's more than a break. It's recognizing my body needs X, Y, Z. My brain needs this. And like, I'm going to I can take 10 minutes to do this thing. I need to separate myself from this. Whatever it might be. There are things that you need because you are a biological, living, breathing thing. And you can't be connected to inertia, to an inert screen, or, not talking to other people all day. Like you need to figure out, like, right. We need to figure that out. And that's a big part of, I think, what makes so much of this, the crisis of how we're dealing with, or going to deal with, living alongside of artificial intelligence, because, we've become wrapped up in this world that can predict our behavior and get us to do things. We've been living in it forever now, since the advent of social media.
I mean, to your point, like all of that is correct, right? I think it's about the intentionality, right, of what we're doing as human beings. That's necessary, because I feel that I actually was starting to work with a couple of people probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago on like kind of introduction to meditation 101, right? And like all of us at some point in time, we all told ourselves, this is silly. There's no way we're going to do it. I can't focus for any period of time. Like all the things that would try to talk ourselves out of, right, being able to meditate. And what I always tell people is what helped me is always the fact and the idea of that if you can just focus on starting small, right? 30 seconds to a minute. And just focus on your breathing, right? Like in through your nose, out through your mouth, right? In through your nose, out through your mouth. And just being able to feel the air coming in and then going out. And I said that the amount of time, right, that you are able to do it and focus on your breathing is not important. To me, as you were saying, it's the routine, because you begin to build stamina, right, as you do it. And the more repetition that you do it, the longer you're able to do it. And then the way I look at it is that you're actually building up that stamina and almost as a reserve. So when you do need to be able to balance yourself and you need to meditate for whatever reason, you can do that by that time. So you may be able to do that at some point, but as long as you keep building, right? And it builds upon itself. That's the important part. I always tell people just being able to have a starting point and allow yourself to get into the pattern and the behavior of doing that so that you can, it's targeted and you're finding an opportunity for yourself to be able to get away and then connect, right, with yourself, instead of always being focused on something. We have to put a conscious effort into making sure that we put back into ourselves, right? Because we need that like life energy that I refer to that living things have to help to replenish us and to make us feel kind of whole again, so that we can then go back to doing what we are doing throughout our day so that we're able to be successful.
Yeah. And so I was going to extend this whole conversation too, is to incorporate this idea of having to, live alongside AI and all of that I was saying before. And I was wondering if you are seeing that challenge yet in your, in the position that you have and as a leader. And like, if you're thinking about what it means to adapt to this as someone who is conscious and remain someone who is conscious of the self, not, thinking of adaptation or acceptance of artificial intelligence in our daily lives as something that is, something that we want to work with, but not get lost in. And I know we all don't have the definitive answers for this, but I'm wondering if that is, this could be the first time you're thinking about it, but you can wander about it with me. We can just wander through that path, but I'm wondering if you are having any ideas about, especially in the light of leadership and school leadership for educators, but like this, just the concept of being able to step into it and accept and embrace without being lost and elevating the self. And I do think a lot of what you have learned to cultivate personally is part of what we need. It's part of that reflection. And so I'm wondering if you have thought about that at all, or what you would say to others.
I know. I definitely, I like, especially, the terminology of working, living alongside, right? Because that is the reality. So I'm a realist, right? And so I understand that the world that I live in and then that I operate in, the environment, that I live in, I can't necessarily isolate myself, right? And go away from what we know as civilization, right? I still have to work. I still have to be able to sustain myself, and I earn a living, and I have to still function in the world because that is my existence, right? That's what I know. So I think that that's part of it, and I think it goes back to what I said before about being an extremist or people being in extremes, right? It's almost like being able, if you are able to understand the idea of being present in the understanding of having a middle path, as I discussed, then it allows you to be in a better space to live alongside technology, AI, etc. Instead of saying, I have to dive all the way in, right? And just go ahead head first, no matter what, or being in a state of sometimes those of us that are challenged by other generations when that are far more advanced in terms of certain things, and we are somewhat stuck in wanting to change or try things, right? That's the other side of the extreme as well. So I think if you're able to be in that space and to cultivate that, those skills will translate into what you're asking, right?
So what I like to ask people at the end of a conversation is to give us some, I hate using the word insight again. I feel like I say that a lot on this podcast, but to give us a fuller picture of who you are and the kinds of things that you are consuming, I guess, what goes into your brain. It doesn't have to be related to career or education
Sure.
at all. In order to do that, I like to ask if you would like to share something you're either reading right now or listening to or watching. You could share something from all those categories or pick one. Whatever it is that you think you would recommend to people or that you're enjoying.
Sure. So, I'm gonna start with what I'm actually watching, and it's not education related. It's pretty, I guess it's not high thinking, but in terms of me, I promote my balance, boundaries, and breaks, and for me, it is a break. It's actually a sitcom, and my daughter and I watch it. My daughter's 18. And we watch it, and it's actually a comedian, George Lopez, and his real life daughter have a sitcom, Lopez versus Lopez. And the reason why I'm watching it is because the dynamic between father and daughter is very similar to the dynamic between my daughter and myself. And the funny thing is, I didn't know she was watching the sitcom, and she didn't know I was watching it until we happened to mention it and talk about it. So we started watching it together. And really there's a lot of themes in terms of family, in terms of the definition of family, right? Because, I think that's a term that gets thrown around a lot, right? Because there are people that you're related to, but there are also people that are your family, if that makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what that means. And the other thing, there's themes in terms of mental health, in terms of trauma, and then also just, intergenerational relationships, right? So for me, it's been really rewarding and kind of like a guilty pleasure for me to do that, because after I have a long day at work or have a long week, I can watch that with her, and I can watch it for myself. And I'm really able to just sit back and just enjoy myself doing so. So, for any dads that may be out there that have daughters in particular, I would recommend it. It's funny. It's interesting, and it has a lot of, and I think that the unique dynamic is that they are actually true father and daughter. So it makes the dynamic great.
That is a wonderful suggestion. I love that. Not only a recommendation of what to watch, but how to watch it and get the best out of it.
100%.
Perfect package there.
Yep.
So especially going into the big season of spending more time together with people.
Yes.
I think that's a good thing.
Yes.
So where can people find you who are listening and would like to connect more with you or ask questions? Let us know links and handles on social media.
Sure, I can do that. So I would say my social media home, so to speak, has always been, I guess, what we now call X, formerly Twitter, right?
Yep.
So I know it changes, but for me, your listeners can always find me at Evan Whitehead 00 on X. And then also in terms of Instagram, I do have an Instagram handle as well. And you can find me on Balance, Boundaries, and Breaks. So you can go ahead and search me that way. And then, I'm open to receiving email suggestions as well, whether it means, you just want to ask some questions about what I talked about here, or questions about the work on my 3Bs, my balance, boundaries, and breaks, and kind of the stuff that I do, whether it's consulting or public speaking or even coaching, because I'm also mindset and accountability coach as well. So you can reach me at my email address, which is Evan Whitehead, EvanWhitehead, the number 11 at gmail.com.
Beautiful. Now there's no excuse, everybody. Get in touch with that. Cool. Well, thank you so much for stopping by the pretend studio today. It was good to have you back.
Thank you so much.
I feel like
I
think I said this last time we chatted, but you're someone that I could have regular conversations with, I think, about this. It just keeps our minds moving forward, right?
Then we will put it into the universe for sure.
Thank you, Evan, for stopping by and being so open about your relationship with mindfulness and the role that you now find yourself in. And I love how we're able to bring it all back to the integral part that self-reflection plays in the process of continuous growth and the process of learning to be ever more adaptable. So switching gears for 1 second, Thanks to everyone out there who has signed up to try out Swivel's new product, Mirror, during its first demo program cycle. Mirror is Swivel's new AI-powered self-reflection tool that helps students supercharge and regulate their reflective practice. We believe that the higher order skills that we all need in the age of AI are going to rely on our level of self-awareness and our ability to better manage our emotions, work habits, choices, relationships, and learning. And we're using AI to help us do that. Basically, the mirror is where we want you and your students to meet your potential self, your best self. So there's a link in the show notes today to sign up to be a part of this incredible opportunity, which is the Mirror Demo Program. Basically, we send you a free mirror device to your school and you use it with some light guidance from us over the course of 30 days. And then you tell us what happened. It's that easy. So follow the link in the show notes to sign up now or go to swivel.com for more information. Back to the podcast really quickly. Please consider letting us know what you think by leaving a review or even a rating in Apple Podcasts. And you can reach me on Twitter at scandela9. The hashtag Optimalist can always be used when posting your answers to questions that we ask here, especially if you can't find the original post, and I'll be sure to see it. I can also be reached at Sara@swivel.com. You can listen and subscribe to the Optimalist podcast wherever you love listening to great podcasts. New episodes are released on Wednesdays. Links to all the resources mentioned are available in the show notes. The Optimalist podcast is brought to you by Swivel. At Swivel, we understand that the biggest challenge in education is the rate of change. Policy revisions, technological advancements accelerated by AI, evolving job markets, and ongoing research constantly identifying new best practices are only some of the factors affecting the rate of change in education. So to learn how Swivel can help you be more reflective, engaged, and adaptable, visit swivel.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for listening to The Optimalist today, and I will be back next week with a whole new conversation.